Well, 9 to noon is not restarting from Indianapolis. That was a request by Ryan Grigson, Senior Vice President of Player Personnel for the Minnesota Vikings. He with the microphone on and mad producer being sharp and on point as he is, Mr. Grigson said, is the bumper music, and actually said bumper music, going to be the Sanford and Son theme? And then I informed him the actual name of the song is Street Beater, done by Quincy Jones way back in the day, tied it to the 70s kind of hit sitcom, Sanford and Son. And your radio acumen and your appreciation for bumper music and the way radio is executed never ceases to amaze me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you love that song or what?
I mean, how can you not like that song?
I know.
I mean, you'd hear it 1,000 times and you don't want to not hear it.
Now, a late happy birthday to you, my man.
Thank you.
51 years of age.
Yeah.
I think it was Saturday.
Yep.
And as a present, you come to the Combine, and maybe there are free agents and or rookies who are going to come popping out of a cake in the very near future to wish you a late happy birthday, right?
I could do without that, but, interview is good enough.
Yeah, I understand that. And you, with all your experience in the NFL, the Combine would be old hat for you. In Indiana, the state per se is not. You being Indiana born and bred, and general manager for the Indianapolis Colts. So you played for Purdue. Do you just love this state? And is coming to the Combine kind of like a coming home party for you?
I was just telling Sam on the way over here. It's hard to budget the 30 minutes it takes from the JW to interviews in Lucas Oil, because you're going to see people. And then, it's kind of crazy how long I've been part of this now. I think I've been here since 98, coming here since 98. I wasn't invited to the Combine as a player, so that would have been longer. Yep.
Thought you were a game-changing offensive lineman tight end at Purdue.
I guess not. I snuck in there somehow, got drafted. But anyway, no, it is coming home in a lot of ways. I met my wife at Purdue. I grew up in Northwest Indiana. I was born in East Chicago. I was raised in Highland, Indiana, which is really close to the edge of Chicago. And people that are from the state, they kind of don't. It's called the region, and if you're from around here, people that go to all the schools, Indiana, Purdue, they're like, oh, you're from the region. Either how we talk, how we act, the type of foods we like. We're kind of like our own kind of sovereign state, I would say.
Well, with Indiana, is there a preferred food of choice? I mean, you get into Tex-Mex down in Texas and comfort food in the South.
I would say I didn't know until I went to Purdue, because I grew up so close to Chicago. It was deep dish, kielbasa, all the ethnic foods. The Mexican food up there is stellar. But down here, it's the pork loin sandwich. That's kind of the big treat down here that everybody likes. But there's some good spots in town that I've already hit up in my short time here, and I'm looking forward to after this.
Is it Indianaans or Indianans?
It's Hoosiers, but
yeah, Hoosiers.
But the thing about that is I'm a Purdue guy.
Okay.
And there's some real legit dislike for Indiana and vice versa, university.
Yeah.
So I would just say I'm a native of Indiana. I don't really call myself a Hoosier.
Well, if you are a born and bred Hoosier, not you, but just period overall, and say you live in Indianapolis or the surrounding region, is St. Elmo's revered within the state and city the way it is for all of us who come here?
It really is.
It's unbelievable.
No matter where you go, if you say Indianapolis, they talk about the shrimp sauce. It's not even about the shrimp; it's about the sauce.
And Harry and Izzy's, right?
I love Harry and Izzy's, though. I love the filet mignon, like little sliders there. They're just.
How do you keep your great figure?
It's where you wear a lot of black. Otherwise, I look like Grimace. We have so much good black stuff that we wear. It's really helpful.
Look at me.
It's helpful.
I haven't felt my ribs in 30 years.
It works, man. It's an optical illusion.
Now, when you got the job as general manager for the Indianapolis Colts, and you were GM for half a decade, was that a dream come true for a Hoosier kid?
Really, it happened so fast. And again, like I literally could ride my bike to the Chicago line, where I grew up. So I grew up
in the region.
And the Colts weren't a team in Indy until I was like in 7th grade, 6th grade. So I thought it was really great, but we weren't Pacers or Colts fans. Everything we had was from Chicago. We were on Central Time. So I grew up, like my uncles had season tickets to the Bears. I lived for the 85 Bears back then when I was a kid. But we never rooted for them growing up because they weren't very good until Ditka got there.
Yeah.
So, the only kids that wore really Bears stuff on the playground, you just knew their dad was making them wear it. Everyone was wearing Steelers and the Cowboys.
Yeah.
That was it back then.
Right. Well, I mean, you like the NBA, right?
I do.
All right. Well, you had a conundrum. I mean, if you said that the region, here we are on the border and you got Bulls and you got MJ, but I mean, low key, it would have been kind of cool to love those good Indiana teams with Dale Davis, Antonio Davis, Rick Smits, Haywood Workman. He was a badass guard, and now he's a ref in the NBA. And, of course, Reggie Miller. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like it was en vogue to love the Bulls, but, like, the cool kids love the Pacers, man.
Well, I'll say this. My grade school, the only way I ever went to games, and I was telling my 8-year-old, because Kwesi was awesome enough to hook me up with some Timberwolves tickets last week. My little 8-year-old literally cried. He's so into the NBA that he was so excited. It was unbelievable.
And then we lost to Charlotte.
Yeah, it was a tough game. But he the little guy was. I mean, he was so happy. But the thing was like in grade school we would get tickets, and I would go with like the altar boys. We would go to Chicago Stadium for Blackhawks and Bulls games.
Ooh.
And we just didn't get any coverage of the Pacers. The only other teams I could watch was Dominique Wilkins with the because of TBS on cable back then.
Yeah.
With TBS, and then even the Knicks because WOR was on our cable.
Yep.
So that was really neat.
You're getting a lot of Cubs with Harry Carey.
Oh, God.
WGN.
Oh, I mean, that was
Harry Carey was the bomb.
Now everybody, it's hardcore, either Cubs or Sox where I'm from, but my grandfather would watch the Cubs every day.
Yeah.
The AC was never on for some reason in the house. And I'd sit next to him and watch it, and he would yell at the TV the entire game. And then the next day he'd do the same thing. I'm like, why are you watching this? Do you hate them?
Right.
He hated them. So poor guy never got to see him win a title, but it's still amazing they did. 1908.
So
that's
wait,
a drought.
If your son goes to a Timberwolves game,
and
they inexplicably lose to LaMelo Ball, Mark Williams, and Charlotte, and he cries. Well, then how did he handle the playoff loss to the Giants?
All right. You ready for this?
Yeah, I am. As a dad, yes, I am.
So my wife during games, I'll sometimes just ask her. If we're down, like by a score or two, I'll say, how is he doing?
Uh-oh.
And the thing in our house, like we have a family group chat, and people just text during the game, does JJ have the blinkies? We call him the blinkies because he starts blinking when he's going to cry.
I got that gene.
So the poor guy, he lives and dies by every down. Like we'll be down 3, and he'll start. Sometimes I'll get a text. He's getting the blinkies. I'm like, we're down 3. We're gonna be all right.
How old is he?
8.
Does he ever text you saying throw more, run more?
Thank God he doesn't have a phone.
Can you talk to Kevin at halftime and blitz more?
No, we're not giving the 8-year-old a phone. It's not happening.
That's terrific.
But I told me the other night, I go, you can maybe be an NBA scout because, he saw Gobert. And he's like, how tall is Gobert, Dad? And I was like, he's 7 foot. He's 7'1". And he's like, that's Shaq's height. Like he's got a memory like that. So it's
gonna have my job in 10 years.
It's neat. Yeah.
Ryan Grigson, 9 to noon. Now, Harry Carey. Do you remember how Harry Carey would describe a double play for the Cubs? Because I do. It goes
he started with the Sox.
I know.
When I was a kid.
And the Cardinals.
You'll have to tell me. I forget what he would
Well, he
say.
would go like this. Double play ball. Sandberg. Hey! Hey!
Well, Jack Brickhouse was the guy that was the Cubs before Harry Carey. Jack Brickhouse. He used to say Holy Toledo.
Yeah.
When there's a home run. So
Bill King for the Raiders did the same thing.
Okay.
Holy Toledo.
Yeah.
Ryan Grigson is Senior Vice President of Player Personnel for the Minnesota Vikings. His role with the team, not only now, but day-to-day during the season. And some football-related topics will come up around the corner from Indianapolis on KFAN. Just kind of describe you as Kwesi's right-hand man. And, like, if you're his right-hand man, Demetrius Washington with operations is his left-hand man or vice versa. But, I've had people ask me this before. with your title and with your role and half decade as a general manager, and you've just done so much in the NFL, and you played college football, Big Ten D1. Let's begin during a season. What is your how would you qualify or explain your day-to-day role during the season for the Vikings?
Well, it's pretty scripted. I mean, Kwesi's very intentional about how he runs things. He's very organized. We have a lot of meetings. So my day really is centered around meetings because he's about primo communication, which is awesome, because he knows that if he doesn't have those meetings and we don't get together, I'll just sit in my office and watch film all day, and then go to practice and then do the same, and then maybe get a workout in. But it's really just constant communication. Look, there's always something like a hot button item that we're trying to accomplish, whether it's finding a player to add depth to our roster. It's cyclical, like during certain points of the season, trying to scour back ends, bubble guys, so that we're prepared. It's all about being prepared for the next event.
Yeah.
The cut, the 53-man cut, trying to upgrade a practice roster, getting out front in free agency. He's always way ahead, in everything. And that's just how way he rolls. So he's very, very prepared, and we do a lot of things that we might have meetings about certain events that are 4 or 5 months out. So there's a lot of meetings, and there's a lot of tape mixed in. There's, nothing's overly impromptu. We have a lot of mentoring that goes on. I'm an open book always, with the staff, and from just to be able to draw from my experiences. And I let them ask anything. I'll tell them about anything. There's nothing off limits. So part of that's kind of a big part of my job as well. And then I think he pushes me in a lot of ways. And has forced me to grow in many ways because his process is so, like I said, so detailed and it's disciplined. Where sometimes I feel something in a moment, feel super strong about it, and I'm just ready to go get it. But it's better. I feel like we press pause, we discuss it. We have a great group in our executive team and the scouts in our building, and we work through stuff and we come to a conclusion, and he makes a decision with KO. So it's good.
So now, like this time of the year with the Combine, I mean, this is my 12th Combine doing radio shows. The first one we did here, Cam Newton went first. Vikings took Ponder. They took Matt Khalil the next year. And when we were doing the radio shows at Lucas Oil, we were on the concourse with a Pittsburgh radio station, a Kansas City radio station, Dan Dockich and his Indianapolis show, and KFAN, and then the next year the Browns were there. Then the next year it just blew up, and now you see what it is here, in what they call Radio Row in the Indiana Convention, the Indianapolis Convention Center. What I'm getting at is, and then you have the made-for-TV aspect, which popped up within the last 10 years. So the question would be, when it comes to drafting players and knowing you have pro days coming up, knowing you have top 30 dinners coming up, and you have the intel that will be provided from all of your regional scouts, how important is the Combine, or what is important when it comes to the draft process?
I think it's just a big piece that gets us closer to draft day because we still have the top 30 visits. And then coaches, there's always time. Like, you don't have to fret because, even when I was doing it, we could still go fly at a moment's notice if we ran out of top 30 visits, because you can only get 30 that you could bring after the Combine. And they could be guys we already talked to. We didn't feel we had enough in the 20 minutes with. You go do more due diligence on them. But a lot of times you can meet guys even on the eve of the draft that maybe your hair's falling, that might be there, that you never dreamed could be there.
Yeah.
So the Combine is good because in front of all of us, the coaches, the area scout, all the execs, all the coordinators, our head coach, and our GM, they all get to see the player kind of in the same light and get a feel for them together. And I think that's important. And then they get to see how people move. I think that's one thing that I think is important, is just seeing the movement skills of the athletes and see if it matches up versus a catalog of movement you have in your Rolodex of players from the past that have done well.
Yeah. Yeah, that completely makes sense. And, specifically the interview, from an interview standpoint, you can, I would imagine you can see when somebody gets flustered or somebody, is pressed on something and they get flustered with it, like how they handle that pressure, and maybe it translates into not being able to handle pressure at the highest level or handling things with poise. Like players would leave these meetings, I would imagine, and there are times you'd be like, that was an impressive human being. Holy cow. Or, holy Toledo.
Well, that's where I think Kwesi's strength comes really into play, is when someone on the surface, you're like, oh, that kid's rehearsed, that kid's this way, that kid's full of baloney. Like, Kwesi is one that always will argue, like, hey, he's 20.
Yeah.
And you think, like, when I was 20, I was probably just going to do whatever my agent said. So he always gives perspective. Like, he's a humanist. Like, he's really good about not going hard one way. He's a thinker, and he goes through a process constantly to get to a conclusion, which, I think is great in the decision-making process. He doesn't jump the gun. He doesn't ever do that. He doesn't have those, like, instant moments where he's just going to go jump on something without really going through the process.
Yep.
And so that's what we're doing here. And if there's guys that we feel really good about, then we maybe shelf those guys and say, like, all right, he's good to go. These other guys, they're more yellow, not green or red.
Yeah.
We got to see if we can do more work to get them to green or get them to where we think, okay, they're red, let's stay away from them.
Yep. So the red dot is stay away.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of an age-old thing with general managers, right?
Pretty much.
He's red dotted.
I think everybody has their own, kind of flavor and their own ways they mark up their board. And now it's a virtual board. It's not even a board you can grab and touch anymore and throw the magnets on. So.
Yeah. What about your brother, Drew, director of player personnel for the Arizona Cardinals? Maybe there's an opportunity to bully baby brother into an offer that he can't refuse. You know what I mean?
It's funny because over the years, we both have mellowed, so we're not as ridiculous as we were before. Like,
he's strength and conditioning certified, right?
Yeah,
so he might put you in a suplex, even though you're big brother. You're gonna be concerned.
Yeah, it worked for a while.
You call up asking about like Isaiah Simmons or something, you might be in a headlock within 10 minutes.
No, and he knows that MMA stuff and all that, and he's super strong. And there was a time where the big brother stuff, I think I could still just give him a look where he's like, all right, I'm not going there. But now I don't want any part of him. I don't want any part of him.
Yeah, but still, I mean, mom and dad with the gene, here you are, a former general manager, executive vice president of player personnel here, and he's the director of player personnel there at, I think, age 44, 45. Yeah. Are those jobs that you guys aspired to get into? And, like, if there's a Billy, Johnny, Christy, or Susie, Tamika, Antoine, whomever listening right now, and they're like, you know what? I mean, this sounds really, really intriguing. Like what types of classes would a 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old football player take to, like, get themselves ready to potentially become a general manager in the NFL or work in personnel?
I think a lot of people get a misconception about being a scout. They think it's just, sitting in the stands eating peanuts, watching games, and just having a ball. And you really have to ask yourself, one, am I self-disciplined enough to go out on the road, spend all day looking at sometimes, 20 prospects, because there's all these transfers now, and there's no transfer rule anymore. Like, there's all these players. You go to South Carolina or Georgia, and you'd have. Then the next day, you got to drive somewhere 4 hours, and you've got to type reports all night, get that work in, because I never believed in going into a school when you aren't fresh the next day.
Yeah.
You can't have that stuff build up. So you have to work at a fever pace. You got to still balance your life with your family. So people who ever want to get into it, I give them all the reasons not to, and then that gives them a chance to say, like, do I still want to do this? So with my brother, he was, like I said, he was a strength coach certified guy, and I told him, like, hey, do you really want this? Because this is something that I always read Joel Bushbaum. I was always into media guides. I used to take him from our
Joel Bushbaum, Pro Football Weekly.
Oh yeah, he was
Hub Arkish.
He was the man.
Wow.
Yeah, I had lunch with Hub Arkish, Cole Kmet's dad, Frank Kmet. I played with at Purdue. He knew him, and when I was out of football and I was trying to get into scouting, I met with him and all the gracious people that helped me get on this path. My old line coach from the Bengals told me I should get into scouting. I was originally coaching O-line, but I got the bug, and I just, like, the way my memory, like a combination of my memory, my bad back, kept me from really coaching because I was a very hands-on type of coach.
Yeah.
And when I would get to game day, like even the little college I was coaching at, like I'd be crooked because my back would be so messed up. I'm like, this isn't gonna be good for me. So I really, it was my passion, and I feel like the only way you can be good as a scout, Kwesi calls it the sickness. Like you have to be passionate about it, to where if you don't find the answer, right in front of you, the great ones and the great departments in the league historically, they don't just stop at the first roadblock. They're going to try to find a player. And it takes imagination. It takes projection. It takes beating the bushes. It takes extra work.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't want to do extra work. But the great staffs, they not only do it, they like doing it. That's why I call it the sickness.
It is, from what you know now, Ryan, is this a deeper offensive line draft, or how would you qualify it?
Tackle, there are a lot of really interesting tackles in this draft. Guards, okay. I think that there's a lot of tackles that could play guard. I don't think it's premium tackles, but there's some really talented tackles. And a lot of them that I saw, I feel like could transition to guard because, again, it's all about feet, in my opinion. So a lot of the tackles, I think it's a really interesting transition because a lot of the greatest safeties I've seen have been former corners, or really great will linebackers, were safeties. And so a lot of times, like Joel Petonio was a left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
To me, he's a tremendous, if not the best guard in football. So I think a lot of those things kind of tie in. So when you see some of these guys that play with a demeanor and aggressive, impose their will type demeanor at left tackle or right tackle, you're like, man, we have some really good tackles. Wouldn't it be interesting if they played guard?
Right.
But we suss all that stuff out in meetings, and it's hard because sometimes you don't want to take someone that you have zero evidence of ever playing that spot, even though they should be able to.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think Coop would tell you, our O-line coach, and Justin, that you have to have good eyes to play guard. Things happen fast in there. You have two-way goes. You can work with an edge at tackle more so than you can at guard, and it's a quicker path to the quarterback.
Yeah. So beginning like in 91. All right, I think I've asked you this before, but I can't remember the answer. Well, first, were you an offensive tackle or a tight end or both?
Both.
Okay, both. So in 91 with Purdue, when you had 2 receptions and 2 touchdowns, was that tackle eligible tight end guy unbalanced?
Yeah.
Or was it straight tight end?
I'm not going to, try to embellish that.
Make yourself sound like Kelsey?
I was
Hawkinson?
No, I was a tackle masquerading as a tight end. I really was.
You were an unbalanced guy.
Right. But I caught it. When they threw it to me, I caught it.
Okay, well, here's the question. Are we ever going to throw a touchdown pass to Brian O'Neill? I mean, because I've seen these highlights from Pitt, man, where he's running like a gazelle.
Yeah, you're going to have to talk to KO because I've actually dropped that seed. I've said that because I think it makes all the sense in the world because we had Joe Wrights at the Colts, and he played basketball at Western Michigan, never even played college football. And he had really good hands. And he came into the league as a developmental left tackle that started out as a tight end, I believe, as well. And he caught touchdowns for us. I mean, it makes sense.
Time for 2 more. Now, that was 91. In 92 versus the Gophers, I'm just going to lay it out the only way I think it should be laid out. Yeah. Did you almost die?
Yes. But when you're 20, you don't believe that.
And what exactly happened?
Okay, so I had never had an injury in my life playing 3 sports, playing contact football since I was in 4th or 5th grade. Anybody that wore a red jersey, anybody that was never practicing, I just thought like they were faking it.
Taking the day off.
I just didn't think unless they had a cast on, I'm like, this, and it's hot as hell out. Like, I'm like, this guy's taking the day off.
Yep.
But
big-time offensive line mentality.
I would have loved the day off. But anyway, the thing was I ended up getting acute pancreatitis, which is usually an injury that you get like in a high-speed collision with the steering wheel hitting you in the stomach. So they said it was either a blow from a helmet or a perfectly like an elbow or something to be able to make that force of an impact in a pile or something. And I don't remember when it really happened. We won the game, so that was something that helped get me through it. I was playing through a neck at the time, and I had some meds too for my neck, so I probably didn't feel it as much. That was a different era,
Yeah.
But when you did those things,
I understand.
but it was a 4-week stay in a hospital.
Oh,
yeah,
geez.
yeah, it was.
And you came back in '93 and played.
Yeah, I started every game I think except one for the next 2 years.
Damn.
Yeah,
That's one of the more scary times of your life, right?
yeah. But it's odd because even then, as naive and immature as I still was at 20, my body bounced back, and it was something that it took away my invincibility. It rooted me in my faith, which I'll forever be grateful for, to God above, because without that extreme moment in my life, I might not have really understood what's really important. And
Your faith.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was taught it my whole life, but it was something where I actually had to put it into action.
Well, last one then, perfectly segued. I mean, when you and I are off the microphone in the year I've gotten to know you, we're either talking Bible, the TV show The Chosen, or your obsession for grammar and the English language. And that words are something that are very important to you. And it, unless I'm overstating it here, how did that develop in your life?
I really, Our Lady of Grace School in Highland, Indiana, we had a teacher that was, and I wasn't even great in the class, but she emphasized, English and made it really hard. And it was just something that I did a lot of writing. I wasn't a math guy at all, but all that other stuff I was pretty solid at. And I think, Andy Reid was another influence. He was an English lit major that at BYU. He didn't suffer bad grammar and poor summaries well, so
like reports from coaches or scouts or whatever.
Yeah, just always say,
wow,
never put something on a desk you wouldn't put on the head coach of the GM's desk. That's always like a rule to live by.
Yeah,
because they just won't look at it if it's not up to snuff. And so I don't know. It's just something that maybe it's being OCD. I can't not see when something doesn't flow right, because if the reader and the decision maker can't actually take in what you're putting all this work into, if they can't take a look at your summary and get anything out of it, or it doesn't paint the picture of the player, what are we doing here?
Right. Yeah, see, now I understand in my only conversation with your son, JJ, why he said something to me, paraphrasing like, well, I understand margin rules, but they're antithetical to what I learned as a 7-year-old, and thus I'm apoplectic. And I'm like, hey, whoa, he loves words. Yeah. I appreciate you, man.
All right, buddy.
Thank you. Ryan Grigson, the senior vice president of player personnel for the Minnesota Vikings, from the Hoosier State, his home state, and the National Football League Combine. We thank Ryan for joining us. That's the genuine article. And our final segment from Indy is next.